It began in a whisper and culminated in a war. When the news broke about Cody's secret marriage to Robin, legally, behind everyone's back, the Sister Wives universe was broken like glass under stress. What had begun as a family founded on trust and mutual faith was transformed into a war zone of deception, betrayal, and shattered vows. The lights in the courtroom are frigid, the air thick. 4 women are separated, no longer sisters, no longer sisters-in-law, all competing for the truth, for justice, for the fragments of a life that was to be shared. And at the center of it all sits Cody Brown, improperly on the outside, but in his eyes, fear. Because what's about to come next, even he didn't anticipate. This is a tale of love turned litigation, where family became evidence and promises became weapons. A few things before we start. Let me ask you one thing. If you learned that your marriage, your whole life, was a facade constructed on another person's reality, would you forgive? Or would you take it back? Misuse it in the comments, because this tale begins now. The courtroom reeked of varnished wood and tension. The susurration of whispered rumors hung in the air as cameras snapped, reporters fidgeted in their seats, and the whole world held its collective breath for the first words of what was being billed as the Brown family trial. Christine tightened her blazer, her hands shaking as she gazed at the man who once was her husband. Cody sat at the defense table, his gold watch glinting in the light, a beacon of all that he'd created and all that he stood to lose. Across the aisle, the wives, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, occupied the same bench, but not the same sentiment. Decades of jealousy, heartache, and deceit had created fissures too deep to conceal. Even Robin, the object of it all, appeared vacant. She shied away from Christine's glance, her lips clamped tight, her wedding ring barely flashing like some shameful secret. The judge appeared, and quiet rolled through the room like a front of storm clouds. The gavel came down once, hard, absolute. Court is now in session, the clerk said. The trial of Brown v. Brown had begun. And as the first witness took her place to testify, everyone in that courtroom understood. This wasn't about marriage. It was survival. Dana Hollis, the sharp-eyed attorney for the prosecution, stood erect. Your Honor, we will establish that Mr. Cody Brown knowingly deceived and emotionally defrauded his spiritual wives by hiding a legal marriage, an act that denied them rights, trust, and identity. The words strike like thunder. Janelle's eyes brimmed with tears. Mary wrapped her arms tightly, as if attempting to keep herself together. Christine gazed up, defiant, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Finally." Cody shifted across the room, his jaw clenched. His attorney leaned forward to whisper something in his ear, but Cody said nothing. He simply gazed ahead, unblinking, as if he could stare right through the walls and get free. Sometimes the most lethal lies aren't the kind we tell other people. They're the ones we tell ourselves, just so we don't come unraveled. Christine was the first witness to be summoned. Taking her seat, the courtroom seemed diminutive. Her heels clicked softly on the floor, the click reverberating in the stillness. "Mrs. Brown," began the attorney, "how long were you wedded to the defendant?" Christine breathed slowly. "Spiritually, More than 25 years. But in a legal sense? Never. There was murmuring among the crowd. Cameras zoomed in. Christine went on, her voice cracking. He said we were all equal. That love didn't require paper. That faith was more powerful than law. She stopped, dabbing at tears. But he married Robin. Lawfully. Without warning us. He made her the sole wife who existed. The judge lifted his hand for quiet, but already emotion had spilled out across the room. Cody shied away from her eyes, but his hands drummed against the table. Did you ever argue with him? Yes, Christine replied, her voice shaking with both anger and sorrow. He told me it was for the good of the family, for insurance, for the children, but it was never for any of those reasons. It was about power. He made her the legal wife because he wanted power. It's curious, isn't it, how love can be devotion one day and betrayal the next. The defense took the stand, a man named Michael Trent, cool and smooth. Mrs. Brown, isn't it true you had decided to end the marriage prior to hearing of any legal documents? Christine's gaze turned hard. I left because there was no marriage remaining to remain in. The audience sighed softly. Cody's jaw tightened. For the first time, Robin did look up, her eyes wide and glassy. The defense continued. So your choice wasn't due to legal marriage. It was due to your emotional detachment, right? Christine leaned forward. You're mistaken. I left for his lies. For every moment I loved him, he was already somebody else's husband. The judge looked down, scribbling notes, but the rest of them stood there like statues in that truth. The courtroom wasn't even a stage. It was a mirror of decades of repressed agony. Cody breathed out his nose, slow and measured, like a man refusing to detonate. Sometimes in a courtroom, silence says more than any testimony ever has the chance to. The lawyer summoned Mary next. Her pace to the stand was leaden, every step weighed down with years she would never regain. Mary's hands trembled as she swore the oath. Do you promise to tell the truth? I do, she whispered, although the truth had ever been her burden. Mrs. Brown, Dana spoke softly, you were the first wife. How did you discover the legal marriage of Mr. Brown and Robin? Mary's lip quivered. I discovered it through the internet. It was not him who informed me. It was a man she had never met on Facebook. I remember my heart leaping. I thought it was a hoax, a rumor, so I confronted him. She gazed across the room at Cody, tears brimming in her eyes and anger burning. He said it was not important, that I was making too much out of it, that he did it for our protection. But tell me, how do you protect someone by erasing them? The courtroom fell silent once more. Even the journalists halted typing. Robin concealed her face behind her hands and wept silently. Cody's face set, though his leg quivered under the table. Mrs. Brown, the defense interrupted, isn't it true that you and Mr. Brown had already emotionally separated years ago? Mary nodded. Yes, but I still believed in him. I still thought I counted. She faced the judge, her voice shattering. That thinking was my greatest error. When you betray someone's trust, you don't just take their peace. You redo their past. The judge at last requested a short recess, but nobody got up. The tension hung there like electricity in the air. Christine leaned close to Janelle. Do you think he will confess? Janelle shook her head. He'll twist it. He always does. And on the other side, Cody whispered to Robin, his voice low but sharp. You don't need to cry like that. You're making us look guilty. Robin shot back softly. We are guilty, Cody. That moment, small, private, unguarded, was captured by every camera in the room. It would replay on every screen by evening. The very family that had once preached love and togetherness was now the very picture of public disintegration. Sometimes it is not one huge explosion that kills a family. It's the silent cracking that begins years earlier, before anybody hears it. When court was back in session, Dana Hollis again approached the bench. "Your Honor, the prosecution will call our next witness tomorrow, Janelle Brown." Cody's eyes flashed. He knew Janelle had always been his most rational, the one who held things together. If she turned on him now, his defense would crumble. The judge nodded. "We'll continue at 9 a.m. The gavel came down, and just like that, the first day was over. Cameras flashed as the Browns exited, each one walking separately, their once shared lives now divided by the cold corridors of justice. Outside, the reporters yelled out questions. "Christine, did Cody ever confess to lying?" "Robin, did you know you were the only legal wife?" Nobody replied. They simply walked on, like phantoms departing the wreckage of their own home. And yet, even as they left, none of them realized the most explosive testimony was yet to come. The morning sun pierced the windows of the courthouse like broken glass, cutting the tension that clung to everyone who was brave enough to step inside that building again. The trial had already reached national obsession level. Every headline, every TV show, every Twitter feed humming with conjecture over who would crack first. Christine got there before her, her face serene but her eyes puffy from a night awake. Mary came next, quieter now, not looking the cameras that followed her in the eye. And then Janelle, firm, impassive, the woman who had kept the family together with turmoil and compromise. Today, she would testify. And everyone in that room understood. If Janelle testified against Cody, it would no longer be a secret. It would be used as a weapon. Cody entered last, face impassive, Robin behind him, red-rimmed eyes from tears that no longer generated sympathy. The gavel fell again, ringing like a heartbeat through the wood-paneled courtroom. "Court is in session." Janelle rose when her name was spoken. Her movements were resolute, yet her fingers shook a little. She straightened her glasses prior to bringing up her right hand. "Do you promise to tell the truth, the complete truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." She sat down, releasing a quiet breath, her eyes fixed on the prosecutor. "Mrs. Brown," Dana Hollis started, her voice calibrated but slicing. "You've known Mr. Brown for almost 3 decades. You were the equilibrium, the mediator. Tell the court what you did, or didn't know, about the legal marriage between Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robin Brown." Janelle hesitated, her throat constricting. "I had no idea until months afterwards. By then, it wasn't a marriage. It was a system. All that we had done, our finances, our deeds to the home, had been moved quietly into Cody and Robin's name." A hushed murmur spread through the courtroom. Journalists wrote furiously. "And how did you discover it?" "In a document," answered Janelle, producing something from her small folder. The bailiff took it from her and handed it to the judge. "It's a property transfer agreement, one that I was told was for tax purposes. But it wasn't. It was to obtain Robin's legal status. The rest of us were ousted quietly. We were made tenants in our own homes. As soon as truth becomes evidence, the line between betrayal and justice disappears." Cody's attorney objected immediately. "Your Honor, that document was included in a family agreement, not a fraud." The judge arched an eyebrow. "We'll let the witness finish." Janelle's voice trembled a little as she continued. "I trusted him. I believed him every time he said, 'It's for the family.' But he wasn't defending the family. He was defending Robin. He was defending his own kingdom." Dana nodded. "Did you call him out on it?" Janelle's jaw clenched. "Yes. I told him he'd built a house of cards and it was going to fall. He explained to me that I didn't get it, that I was being emotional. But when I presented it to him, he tore it up in front of me." The courtroom collectively gasped. Even Christine looked at Janelle, shocked. "He tore it?" "Yes," replied Janelle, her voice shaking. "He said to me, 'If you think you can bring me down, you'll ruin this family.'" She stared at him then, the years of fidelity congealing into ice. He was mistaken. The family was already ruined. Sometimes it is not the breaking point that annihilates a person. It's the knowledge that they've already been broken for years. Cody's attorney came forward for cross-examination, his voice falsely calm. "Mrs. Brown, you were always the pragmatist. Isn't it a fact that you profited financially from the family holdings for years?" Janelle nodded. "Yes, but I worked hard for every penny of it. We all did. We created this life. But when the papers came with all the legalities, all we created belonged to him." The prosecution pushed harder. "Would you call your current testimony an act of anger?" Janelle laughed quietly, bitterly. "I'm not angry. I'm free. I just wish I'd realized the bars of the cage sooner." Even the judge appeared taken aback at the naked emotion in her voice. On the defense table, Cody's self-control faltered. He craned over toward his attorney. "She's manipulating it. She's emotional." The attorney spoke back softly. "They're all emotional, but juries believe emotion." Cody's scowl turned to Janelle, but she didn't blink. She gazed at him the way a woman gazes at the truth she no longer dreads. There's an odd strength in having lost everything, because once you do, there is nothing else they can take away from you. Dana moved closer. "Mrs. Brown, one last question. If Mr. Brown appeared before you today and asked for forgiveness, what would you do?" Janelle drew a deep breath. "Forgiveness is for the innocent, not the builders of deceit." The room went completely silent. It was not a statement. It was a sentence in its own right. The judge finally recessed. The press rushed out of the room, trying to get the quote that would top every headline in the nation. The wives convened in a corner of the hall. Christine spoke to Janelle. "You did what none of us could." Janelle smiled wistfully. "No, I just finally quit pretending." Robin sat by herself on a nearby bench, head lowered. As Christine walked by, Robin whispered, "I didn't mean for it to be like this." Christine halted. "Then you should have spoken up when you had the opportunity." For a fleeting moment their eyes locked not as enemies, but as two women who had lost the same hope. When loyalty and truth collide, one dies first, and it's seldom the truth. As the morning gave way to the second half of the day, Dana Hollis produced new proof, bank statements, insurance policies, and a series of legal documents that named Robin Brown as the sole beneficiary on multiple family accounts. Cody's jaw compressed more with each exhibit. "This is not fraud," his lawyer protested. "This was protection. Each choice my client made was in the best interest of his wives and his children." Dana smiled wickedly. "Protection or planning?" She displayed one last document, the marriage certificate between Robin Brown and Cody. "Tell me, Mr. Brown," she directed straight at him, "if this marriage was so innocent, why did you keep it hidden for 3 years? Cody stood up a little, as if to answer, but his attorney pulled him back down. The judge watched, patient. Dana went on, voice dropping, fierce. "Did it have something to do with the fact that when your other wives found out, the whole fantasy would be destroyed?" The defense protested once more, but it was irrelevant. The question hung in the air like smoke, unfadable. The truth doesn't always require an answer. It only has to be heard. Post-adjournment, the courthouse stairs were lined with flashing lights and yelling reporters. "Cody, are you guilty of misleading your wives?" "Christine, how do you feel following Janelle's testimony?" "Robin, did you know about the property exchanges?" But the Browns remained silent. They simply moved apart once more, each one lost within their own shadow. That night the headlines were merciless. Cody Brown, the polygamist, on trial. Sister wives' betrayal. Janelle's explosive testimony. Social media was a firestorm. Every video clip dissected, every tear analyzed. But in the quiet of her hotel room, Christine stared at the ceiling, feeling no victory, only exhaustion. We're not even halfway, she whispered to herself. Mary, on another side of the apartment, scrolled through her phone, viewing old pictures of family dinners, birthdays, smiles that at the time had felt genuine. She deleted them each individually. Janelle sat at her window, viewing the city lights twinkling like dying stars. It wasn't ever about winning, she whispered. It was about being noticed. And Cody? He was in his hotel suite, pacing, infuriated. They're all turning against me, he growled. Robin sat quietly on the sofa, arms around herself. You turned on them first, she spoke quietly. He halted, scowling. Don't even begin. No, Cody, she breathed. I think I already began. When those people who stood up for you before start questioning you, then the truth begins breathing. The following morning in court, the atmosphere was charged. The judge made the proclamation that there was new evidence that came to light, an anonymous email to the court that stated Robin had been coerced into not speaking out. The courtroom erupted into a murmur. Dana looked over at Robin. Mrs. Brown, would you like to testify? Robin stood still. The lawyer for Cody immediately objected. Your Honor, my client's wife does not need to testify against her husband. But Robin answered, trembling. I'll testify. The judge's eyes opened wide. Are you sure, Mrs. Brown? Robin nodded slowly. Yes. I can't keep lying. Cody's head jerked in her direction, incredulity washing across his face. Robin, what are you doing? She didn't glance at him. She just whispered, telling the truth. And just like that, the courtroom that had been constructed on denial was going to hear its first confession. The courtroom was quiet enough that the tick of the ancient wall clock could be heard, each second drawing the air tauter as Robin stood, shaking in front of the judge. Her fingers gripped the edge of the witness stand as if she would fall over if she loosened her grip. Cody Brown's gaze tracked her every movement, cold, calculating, concealing panic behind the thin patina of assurance. Krista, Janet, and Mary sat in the plaintiff's bench, their hearts racing. They had been waiting for years for this moment, but none of them anticipated Robin turning against him. The judge gestured. Mrs. Brown, you can start. Robin's mouth opened, but nothing was said. Dana Hollis, the prosecutor, drew near, speaking softly and with patience. Take your time, Mrs. Brown. Tell the court what you're here to say. Robin shut her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. It began before legal marriage, she whispered. Cody said I was special, that I was chosen. He explained that the papers were just formalities. But afterward, he had me sign things that I had no idea what they were. Deeds to property, bank accounts, even insurance policies. He said it was for everyone's protection. But what he actually said was that it would shield him. Gasps circulated through the room. Cody's attorney leapt to her feet. Objection! Speculation! The judge negatively shook her head. Overruled. Please proceed, Mrs. Brown. Robin nodded slowly, her tears running down her cheeks. He told me if the others got wind of it, they'd turn against me. He said they were jealous, that they'd destroy what we'd established. So I remained silent. I allowed him to transfer everything into our names. I thought I was rescuing our family, but I was merely assisting him in erasing them. As soon as truth reaches air, It scorches everything it previously concealed behind. Cody's fists tightened on the defense table. "That's not true," he grumbled, but his words were overwhelmed by the rustle of pens and murmurings swelling like a tide. Dana leaned forward. "Mrs. Brown, did you know that Mr. Brown had deposited the family's joint savings into a side trust in your name?" Robin nodded unhappily. "Yes, but he explained it was temporary. He said it was to protect against legal complications." "And did you ever lay eyes on that money again?" "No," she whispered. "Tell me not to ask." The prosecutor moved back and presented a string of documents on the screen. Bank accounts, electronic transfers, even signed notarized contracts with both their signatures. Every one yanked another strand from Cody's disguise. His jaw clenched, his control unraveling inch by inch. The judge looked at him unmoved. Sometimes silence is not power. It is the precursor to collapse. Dana's voice gentled. "Mrs. Brown, why are you speaking now?" Robin glanced at Krista, then at Mary, then finally at Janet. "Because I thought he loved me. But love doesn't require you to bury people alive so you can be taller." She dried her face, her voice firming. "They all have the right to know the truth, and I have the right to stop lying." Cody shot forward abruptly. "You don't know what you're doing," he growled. The bailiff edged closer, but Robin did not blink. She looked at him. "I get it. You established a family out of fear and called it faith. You said we were chosen, but we were merely handy." The courtroom outburst. The judge brought her gavel down. "Order!" Cameras went crazy. Reporters scrambled to catch the instant when the fourth wife publicly shattered the chain. Cody's attorney attempted to salvage it. "Mrs. Brown, you acknowledge that you signed voluntarily, right? You were not threatened?" Robin's tone toughened. "When someone controls your finances, your house, your religion, and your children's future, you don't require a gun to be coerced." A muttering of assent ran through the room. Krista teared up, Mary's fists tightened, and even the judge appeared visibly affected. When someone finally names their prison, that is when the walls begin to crack. Dana moved forward once more, this time her voice keen. "Mrs. Brown, I heard you did receive an anonymous email last month pushing you to come forward." Robin nodded. "Yes. I believed it was one of them, but it wasn't. It was from another person." "Who?" Dana inquired. Robin hesitated. "It said, 'You're not the only one he lied to.'" The words hovered in the air like smoke. The crowd shifted. Cody's lawyer complained again, but this time his voice was shaky. "Your Honor, we request a recess. This line of questioning is irrelevant." The judge leaned forward. "Denied. The witness may continue." Robin breathed shallowly. I didn't know what it meant, but then a couple of days later, I received a message from one of Cody's former business associates, one who claimed that Cody had hidden assets abroad. That's when I knew this was no longer about love or matrimony. It was about finances. The whole courtroom fell silent. Cody's attorney blanched. Even the camera operators put down their gear for a moment, as if they feared to record the outburst. All secrets have a heartbeat, and once it begins to pound, it cannot be stopped. Dana swung toward Cody. "Mr. Brown, do you care to respond to these allegations?" Cody's face flushed. "This is absurd. I provided for all of them. I built all they own." His voice broke into a bellow. "They are ungrateful." The judge held up her hand sharply. "Mr. Brown, calm yourself." But Cody was not listening. He pounded his hand on the table. "You all demanded security. I provided it to you. You demanded houses. I constructed them. You demanded liberty. And now you wish to crucify me for the same?" The courtroom shook with his fury. Krista stood up abruptly, her voice piercing through the commotion. "No, Cody. You constructed a cage and labeled it a home, and we lived in it because we loved you." He stopped dead, the words striking harder than any verdict ever could. The judge called for a recess, but the harm was done. The world had witnessed him fall apart. When control is lost by the manipulator, the truth at last learns to breathe. In the hallway outside the courtroom, reporters hurled questions. "Robin, are you scared? Krista, do you believe he'll be convicted?" But Robin didn't answer. She walked straight past the flashing lights and into the cold air, feeling, for the first time in years, like she could breathe without asking permission. Inside, Cody sat alone. His lawyer whispered urgently, "We need to prepare for damage control." But Cody didn't move. His head was elsewhere. Years ago, perhaps, to the day that he had persuaded 4 women to believe in him, to construct him, to refer to him as their leader. Now they were his witnesses, his prosecutors, his downfall. The following morning, the courtroom filled once more, but the atmosphere was different. Robin sat removed from Cody now, no longer by his side but across from him. The defense tried to cross-examine her testimony, but the cracks were too deep-seated to fix. She remained resolute, reciting details, remembering dates, producing receipts. Each sentence was like another nail in the coffin of the fantasy he had woven. The members of the jury were exchanging glances. Even they could sense the weight of the disintegration. The most difficult aspect of speaking the truth isn't fear of being disbelieved. It's seeing how long you've actually believed the lie yourself. The day crawled by, and the defense tactic changed. "Mrs. Brown," the attorney asked suavely, "if you were coerced, why didn't you go away?" Robin's voice was low, but the reply was thunder. "Because he said leaving would mean losing our children. He told me that law would never be able to protect women like us, and I trusted him." Dana stood at once. "Your Honor, that's not choice, that's emotional coercion." The judge nodded gravely, scribbling notes. Cody's attorney attempted again, hoping. "So you're telling me my client used faith and fear to coerce you?" Robin stared at Cody. "I'm saying he used love, and that's worse." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Cody's eyes glistened, but it wasn't remorse. It was fury. He muttered something under his breath, but no one could hear. Every empire eventually falls, and it always starts with the whispers of the people who built it. By late afternoon, Robin's testimony had drawn to a close. She stepped down from the stand and walked toward the exit. As she passed Krista, she paused. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Krista shook her head, tears welling. "Don't be. You did something he never could do. You told the truth." The day concluded with the judge declaring court would be reconvened for financial evidence and cross-examination come morning. But as the families exited, they all sensed it. The case had shifted. The public had glimpsed the man behind the curtain. Cody's charm, empire, and control was shattering quick, and underneath was something colder, darker, and much more human: fear. The sky outside was red, the sun setting low like a dropping curtain on the longest play of their lives. Reporters shouted one last question. "Robin, do you still love him?" She halted on the steps, her face lit by flashing camera bulbs. "Yes," she replied softly, "but love isn't always going to save someone. Sometimes it's going to free you." And on that note, the woman who had stood with him departed, leaving the man who had constructed his universe upon devotion, standing alone amidst the wreckage of it. The next day began gray and oppressive. the sort of sky that felt as though it weighed upon the courthouse itself. Within, the air was more tense than the smell of coffee and aged varnish. Reporters occupied the corridors like deer anticipating a gunshot. Even the bailiffs whispered. As the doors swung open, Cody entered first, his self-assurance strained, his suit sharp, but his eyes empty. In his wake, his attorney bore a box of files that seemed less like evidence and more like desperation. Across the room, Krista, Janet, Mary, and Robin sat in a row for the first time in years. The estranged wives sat in stunned silence, their solidarity no longer founded on fear and faith, but on something harder: truth. The judge entered, gavel snapping the air like thunder. Court is now in session. Dana Hollis stood, serene and clinical, grasping a bulging folder of papers. Your Honor, we stand before you today with the Brown family household accounts financial audit. She paused, her eyes drifting over to Cody. What we've found alters everything. The first picture projected on the screen was a series of offshore moves. Hundreds of thousands of dollars transferred quietly over years. A collective gasp arose from the crowd, reporters' pens flying. Cody's attorney leapt up. Objection! This information was not revealed in initial discovery. The judge lowered her glasses. Then your client has some explaining to do. The more profound the lie, the more deafening the silence when it finally shatters. Dana went on. These accounts were opened in shell companies that related to Mr. Brown's personal trust. Monies that were intended to fund several families were channeled into one account, held solely in his name. She turned over another page. And when Robin testified yesterday that she had no idea where the money went, she was accurate, because this wasn't protection. It was theft. Gasp after gasp. Cody's face clenched, his cool crumbling. That's not theft, he snapped. That's management. The judge rapped her gavel. Mr. Brown, you will be silent unless addressed. He sat down, but his face turned fire engine red. Janet leaned over to Krista, whispering, He's falling apart. Krista nodded somberly. He's always said money was love. Guess we finally know whom he loved most. Dana entered another exhibit, signed authorization forms for moving property deeds out of the shared fund into Cody's separate holding company. Each signature bore one of their forgeries. Your Honor, Dana told him, our handwriting experts have verified these were forged. The judge's brow wrinkled. Cody's attorney stuttered. We challenge authenticity. Then put your expert on, Dana retorted. The judge pointed to Cody. Mr. Brown, did you sign these for your wives? Cody's tone was deep. They gave me permission. All of them? They trusted me. The judge's voice took a keener edge. Trust isn't consent. When power masquerades as faith, it is no longer leadership, it is control. Krista jumped up suddenly. Your Honor, may I say something? The judge paused, then nodded. Briefly. Krista addressed Cody. You once told me everything you were doing was for us. You said paperwork didn't count, that family did. I signed things because I trusted you, and you wielded that faith as a weapon. Her voice shook but didn't crack. I'm not upset you loved another person. I'm upset you loved power greater than truth. Cody averted her gaze, but all could sense the flash of shame, or perhaps acknowledgement. Dana continued. Your Honor, beyond the financial malfeasance, we have documentation of coercive methods employed to ensure compliance. She opened up another folder. These are written messages, emails and messages, where Mr. Brown threatens financial devastation to any wife who tries to split up. The courtroom burst out again. The judge commanded silence. Cody's attorney whispered frantically, Where did she find that? Cody didn't reply. He merely sat staring ahead, jaw clenched. Fear's hold is lost the second courage learns to speak. The emails scrolled one by one onto the screen. If you go, you'll lose it all. Without me, you're nothing. The law can't help you." Each of the sentences swelled with the cold stealthiness of domination. Robin put her hand over her mouth. "He spoke to me in exactly those words." Mary nodded weakly. "He said them all to us." Dana turned toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a matter of faith or family. This is a case of power cloaked as love." The defense attempted to counter, but the burden of evidence strangled every sentence. When cross-examination started, Cody at last appeared on the stand himself. The courtroom grew silent. He raised his hand for the oath, voice quivering ever so slightly for the first time. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" "I do." Dana moved toward him, like a surgeon stepping up to make a clean cut. "Mr. Brown, don't you deny sending these funds?" "No, but don't you deny signing these signatures?" "I left that paperwork in someone's hands." "Whose hands?" "It doesn't matter." Dana smiled in a knife-thin line. "It does when it's illegal." The eyes of the jury never left him. "Why did you hide your legal marriage?" she asked. He paused. "When the last piece is in place, the story isn't about blame anymore, but about liberty." The next morning, as sun rose over courthouse steps, the people were already queuing outside. The city hummed with excitement. Inside, Cody looked pale but defiant. Wives sat together again, not out of forgiveness, but out of necessity, because facing him alone was something none of them should do anymore. The judge entered, calling the room to order. Dana stood, holding the flash drive. "Honor, the prosecution has one final submission, newly obtained evidence that captures the defendant's conduct in his own words." Cody's lawyer objected violently, but the judge allowed it. The lights faded. The video played. Cody's voice surrounded the room. "I am the head of this family. What I say goes. You follow me, or you lose everything." His eyes on the video had been cold, absolute. The camera closed in on Krista's face in that tape, tears falling silently as she nodded respectfully. In the here and now, she turned away. The video stopped. No one stirred. Then, after weeks of silence, Cody whispered something softly. "I was attempting to keep us intact." The judge leaned forward. "By denying crucial freedom?" He looked up, eyes empty. "By preventing them from knowing they lost it already." The courtroom remained silent. The gavel banged once. "We resume tomorrow for verdict." Everyone breathed a sigh, as if awakening from a nightmare. The wives went first, passing him in silence. Outdoors, the rain had ceased, leaving the streets wet and shining under the light of the city. Robin faced the others. "It ends tomorrow." Krista nodded. "No," she whispered, her eyes in the direction of the sky. "Tomorrow, it starts." Because the actual trial doesn't conclude in court. It's when you decide yourself over the cage. That courthouse was a cathedral that morning, quiet, reverent, full of the specters of everything already spoken, and everything that still remained unspoken. The rain had passed, but a thick fog clung to the city, curling about the steps where people stood in groups, breathing steam-like in the cold. Inside, all the seats were filled. The wives sat in their group once more. Krista, Janet, Mary, and Robin, bound together not by love, but by necessity. Cody sat by himself at the defense table, his hands folded so tightly his knuckles whitened. The judge came in, her robe moving like a shadowy wave, her face expressionless. "This court," she started, "has considered all the evidence, testimony, and exhibits before us these past weeks." Her voice was steady, but every word hit like a sledgehammer. Dana Hollis, the prosecutor, stood prepared, her eyes fixed on Cody with the intensity of truth. His attorney murmured desperately, but he hardly blinked. But Dana turned to her and said quietly, "Not yet. Trials come to a close, but truth continues to reverberate." Outside, the wives endured a storm of microphones and flashing lights. Reporters bellowed questions. "Are you going to rebuild your lives together? Do you forgive him?" Krista emerged, her chin lifting. "Forgiveness isn't freedom," she declared. "Accountability is." The crowd clapped wildly, but her eyes remained far away, seeking something beyond the din. That evening, she went home to her one-room apartment, the quiet almost deafening. A single envelope, no return address, sat on her kitchen counter. A letter in Cody's handwriting was folded inside. She hesitated for a moment, then opened it. "Krista," it started. "I know you think you've won, but there are things you don't know. Things none of you were meant to see. Check under the floorboard, under the old house. You'll see what actually began all this." Her blood chilled. She phoned Janet right away. "He sent me something," she told her, shaking. "A letter." Janet sighed. "Krista, don't. He's only playing you again." "No," Krista breathed. "I think he's lying this time." Sometimes the ending you prayed for is just the start of another secret. The following morning, Krista took the old property they had once shared, the home where it all started. The gates were rusty, the porch creaked, memories dangling like cobwebs at corners. She walked in, dust particles dancing in the fading light. The house groaned, each creak a sigh from ghosts. Under the floorboard of the master bedroom, she discovered a small metal box. In it, photos, papers, and one flash drive. The pictures were of them, early times, smiling, hopeful. There was one picture, though, that caught her eye. Cody standing beside a man she didn't know, shaking hands in front of what appeared to be a bank vault. The back had written on it, "The Real Fund." She inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The computer screen flickered, showing video files and scanned contracts, all connected to a shadow company registered in her name. "What is this?" she said under her breath. Dozens of transactions, millions of dollars, shifted between accounts abroad. But it wasn't theft. It was something more sinister. Money channeled into what appeared to be an underground system. A trust designed to conceal other families. Dozens of them. Families just like their own. He wasn't alone, she breathed, heart racing. She got Dana on the phone. "You must see this," she said. "It's not over." Dana came in that night, her skin pale as she scrolled through the figures. "If this is true, he wasn't controlling you. He was involved in something bigger." Krista nodded slowly. "And now he's locked up, where he can't speak. But someone else will." Beyond the house, thunder boomed once more, as if the storm had never actually departed. When the truth gets deep enough, it ceases to be personal and becomes dangerous. That evening, Krista couldn't sleep.